Good evening, everybody. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Socorro, Texas. It is June 20th, 2023. It's 5:38 p.m. We call this meeting to order.
Good afternoon, everyone. Item number 2, establishment of quorum. I'll be taking roll call. Andrew Arroyos,
Here.
Enrique Cisneros,
Here.
David Estrada,
Here.
Julie Dominguez, absent. Osvaldo Reza,
Here.
Maria Martinez, absent. We have quorum with 4 commissioners present. Moving on to item number 3, notice to the public, open forum. Lisbeth, do we have anyone that would like to speak?
No, we do not.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion made by Andrew Arroyos to approve and second by David Estrada. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstain? Motion carried. Moving on to item number 5, public hearing request for the proposed amendment to the City of Socorro's master plan and rezoning of Block 1, Lot 2, Sombra de Piro subdivision located at 566 Buford Road, Socorro, Texas, from R1, single-family residential, to C1, light commercial, to allow for a parking area. Mr. Arroyos?
Good afternoon. We open public hearing at 5:39. We will close public hearing at 5:39.
Moving on to item number 6, consider and take action on the proposed amendment to the City of Socorro's master plan and rezoning of Block 1, Lot 2, Sombras de Piro subdivision located at 566 Buford Road, Socorro, Texas, from R1, single-family residential, to C1, light commercial, to allow for a parking area. Mr. Botello?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Jose Botello, planner with the City of Socorro. Item number 6 on the agenda is the rezoning request for 566 Buford Road. Some background on this case: it's currently zoned R1, single-family residential. The lot size is 29,534.5 square feet. It's located at 566 Buford Road. The land use is currently vacant. The future land use has it as a single-family residential. It's within the historic district. The proposed land use is for light commercial, for parking and a ponding area. And the purpose for the rezoning is to create a vehicular parking area for the surrounding businesses, which is Wind Down and Bodega Loya. And so the summary of the request is for approval of a rezoning from R1 single-family residential to C1 light commercial to allow for a parking area. And planning and zoning staff recommends approval. So here's the location map. The property is situated between Socorro Road and Buford. And the zoning map showing the current zoning for the property, as well as the properties within the vicinity of 566 Buford. And a couple of property pictures looking towards the property. One is from Belen, the other in the bottom, the picture in the bottom is from Buford Road. And here you see an aerial image of the property. These are the areas for the constituents that were notified of the rezoning within a 200-foot radius. Next, we have the Sombra de Piro subdivision, which is where this property was subdivided to create 2 lots. The lot here today being presented is a larger lot within the subdivision. And I apologize for the graphics, but this is a site plan we received showing the parking area and the ponding area to the south. And once again, the request is for approval of the rezoning from R1, single-family residential, to C1, light commercial, to allow for a parking area. And at this time, staff can answer any questions.
This is the same one that we had seen about 2 meetings ago, right? I think we approved for preliminary?
Yes,
Same
sir,
one, right?
correct. So there was a slight, mistake on the legal description, which prompted us to bring back the case. Everything is the same.
Sorry, there was a mistake where?
On the legal description?
On the legal description?
Yes, sir, on the previously submitted legal description.
So, go ahead.
I have a question. I was not here for that meeting, so I'm glad this one's coming back, or that we have a question. Did planning and zoning staff ever talk to the applicants about getting some right-of-way, since Buford is a major artery that connects Alameda and Socorro?
No, because the right-of-way that, so TxDOT is in control of Socorro Road, North Loop, and Alameda. And because Buford is a,
Sorry, maybe right-of-way is the wrong question. An easement, or in case that if there's ever an opportunity to make Buford more than just a two-lane road, what do you call it when the city, when the owners give up a part of the lot so that a street can be expanded?
The dedicated right-of-way, I don't know if that's in the plans for Buford.
It's not. But I know that up until,
That would have been in the plat for when they approved Beetle.
in the last one, because I know that the city of Socorro has quite a bit of right-of-way up until the house that's north of Bulldog Park. And that's kind of where it ended. So at one point or another, the city did have plans where we did acquire a big part of Buford between Alameda and just north of Bulldog Park. But I guess that answers my question. We didn't request the right of way, or
During, that would have been done during the plat, and the plat of the subdivision,
instead of the changing of.
not during the zoning
Okay.
amendment.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, I think, just to confirm, but I think I had asked the last time, the owners are planning on putting asphalt on the parking lot? And I know that's not a part of this, but you're considering doing asphalt, or will it be gravel or screening, or?
Ma'am, if you could stand up to the podium and may you state your name.
My name is Maria Estela Padilla. Excuse me, I'm one of the 4 partners that own the Sombra de Piro and the parking area. And right now we have Chad, and we hope to have asphalt later. And we'll be making improvements on it along the way for grading and for additional Chad and for the ponding area, fencing off the ponding area and fencing off the rest of the parking lot.
Okay, I guess the bigger question is, what are the requirements to be permitted? Like when they come in for permitting, is that going to be required? Do they need a permit to turn it into a parking?
I believe the language doesn't specifically say asphalt. I can bring it up here to tell you exactly what it says, but it says improved, compacted is the word in the
Compact.
ordinance, compacted surface.
Compacted surface, but it could be the native soil, it could be concrete, it could be asphalt. Okay, so I guess I'm wondering if once it's passed, ready to go, and they're ready to start using it as a parking lot, will permitting be allowed? Will the permitting department will they issue a permit? Is a permit required to run that parcel as a parking lot? Or how does that work? Like, once you're open for business, is a permit required to run a parking lot out of it? Or is it just a vacant lot that people can park on? And
I don't think that they are required a permit for the parking. They will not be charging for the parking. It's a parking for the business that is associated with the partnership on the corner.
Okay. And so it's under R1 right now, and in order to allow for a parking lot, it needs to be rezoned to C1.
Yes.
Which is what we're doing
Yes.
or asked for today. Okay, and then the other thing, well, I guess it ties in, will a drawing for parking drawn by an engineer be required? Because
A
usually on a,
specific signed, sealed engineering document for the parking lot? No. If they're going to be grading it and laying out asphalt, there might be a permit for that, but
It would be recommended so that the site plan is the scale showing, the amount of parking spaces, but it would not be a requirement.
But even then, we don't have a requirement for the number of parking spaces for the
Like in the
business, or
ordinance.
if they open it up to allowing other folks on Socorro Road, other businesses on Socorro Road to use the parking.
okay, so I'm in favor. We voted on this already. We passed it, but I thought about this after, like, when I saw it on the agenda again, but I'm thinking like the grading on it, the parking spaces, the egress, that once it's up and, because, I'm in favor of the parking. I think you'll need the parking, but once it's open for business, what are we going to be looking at? In other words, like, I know there's a ponding, but is there like a grading plan, an engineered grading plan? Because if not, it's a lot that people can go and park on, but are we going to be, or are there unforeseen issues that maybe we can catch right now and address? Right?
So I think what happens is that would fall under the auspices of code enforcement, and if there's something outside of the code. I think where once it's approved C1, it can be turned into whatever, there's a number of offices or businesses that can be, that a C1 can be turned into. And there's really no need to come back because they're within the auspices of the city ordinances. But unfortunately, we can't decline it based on,
No, but I think to his question, did you want to elaborate on what's been done so far?
Yes, my name is Marty Loya. I'm the wife to one of the partners. So our plan is, with additional funding, is to make it to add the infrastructure needed for a parking lot, which includes asphalt, engineering, segmented parking slots, lighting, walls, everything to make it a true parking lot. We're not just gonna leave it open as a lot right now. We may start using it that way because we are needing to work on funding for this. We are also working with the city of Socorro to allow this parking lot to be used by other businesses, but those are all discussions that are happening right now. Nothing's set in stone right now, but those are our plans at this time.
quick question, Mrs. Loya.
Sure.
Is there any future plans to develop that into something other than the parking lot?
No, the parking lot is needed for the
The other
restaurant,
business, yeah.
which is Wine Down right now. It's also needed for our business. We have a lot of people coming now, and there's nowhere to park.
Mhm.
They're parking in the little lot that belongs to the electric company right now because it's kind of just sitting there. But the parking lot is needed for all the businesses. And it's going to be needed for the businesses on Socorro as well, too, where people can, one of the other things that we like to do, or the goals, is to divert the traffic from Socorro Road, since it's very dangerous. So we're hoping that people utilize the parking lot and be able to walk to the businesses instead of walking on Socorro Road.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions.
Don't have any questions?
Do I have a motion?
I'm sorry, sir, the public hearing was before this. I don't know, you don't have any. Sir?
Señor?
I make a motion to allow.
Okay.
I'll second.
So, go ahead, sir.
My name is
Wait,
Danny
Hold on a
Sanchez.
second. Do we have to reopen public hearing, or can he just comment on?
Yeah, I think proper way to do it is to make a motion to reopen public hearing and then second it, take a vote, and allow.
I make a motion to reopen public hearing.
I'll second.
Sir, go ahead.
I would,
We have to take a vote.
give me 1 second. I have a motion made by David Estrada to reopen and public hearing, and seconded by Enrique Cisneros. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstain? Motion carried.
Go ahead.
My name-
Mr. Arroyos?
Go ahead, sir. Please state your name.
My name is Danny Sanchez. I've lived in Socorro all my life. I have a house right across the street on Buford Road from where the parking lot is gonna be. They built a drainage pond right across the street from me. I wanna know who's gonna maintain that pondage, whether it's gonna be out of concrete or it's gonna be left, because right now it's growing weeds in there. The mosquitoes, and whenever, if it gets wet, who's gonna maintain that pondage? Another thing, 2 weeks ago, I had irrigation. I called the people from the irrigation, Kathy came down, she called the city of Socorro, and she had to get the code enforcement also, because nobody can answer why anybody is doing any construction on that parking lot as far as the wall, the pondage, and the parking itself. According to Kathy, nobody had permits, but we had already gone to one of these meetings 2 weeks ago. Now I want to know why we're here again for the same thing. After you all concluded, and it was a skeleton crew here, it wasn't full, it was only 2 or 3, that said that they approved it. I have concerns that Buford Road is a very narrow street, and it's very highly trafficked, and a lot of those cars they're using it like a highway. I'm disappointed in that. Estela, I don't know, because she's had her wall hit 2 or 3 times on Buford because of the way the cars move around there on Buford Road. I had a suggestion to put a culvert on the canal between the parking lot to let people come in from Belen onto that parking lot instead of Socorro Road. Buford Road. That's going to be an entrance and an exit right in front of my place. I hear that Dusty Tap, they're going to be busing people from that parking to the Dusty Tap. After they're done, they'll have somebody bring them back. And the other one too, the Mesón de Onata, Wynn, and Socorro. So I can just see a bunch of guys coming back from the Dusty Tap, a little high, congregating in a car there, then starting to urinate on the parking lot across the street from my house. Are they gonna put a wall there on Buford Road? Or am I gonna see all of that? Who's authorizing that Buford Road should be the place to go in and out of that parking? Why not from the parking that's inside on Belen Road? You could come in from Socorro onto Belen, go into the parking, Buford, Belen, into the parking, you exit wherever you're gonna exit, the same. There's cars, I can see an accident. Because somebody's gonna wanna get out of the parking lot and try to beat a car that's already coming from Socorro Road, and there's gonna be something there. And the people from the irrigation say that the city of Socorro is responsible for the canal from Belen Road to my property. I wanna know who's gonna be responsible for that canal. I know that Ralph has to clean it up, but as far as that canal right now, I had 2 irrigations, I've already gotten 2. The first one, Ralph cut it off because it was overflowing. Why was it overflowing? Because Ralph went and covered the canal, and he wasn't supposed to do that. I called these guys and they said, he shouldn't do that. We're gonna have to go and talk to him about that. He should never cover a community ditch, and he did. He did it because he said he wanted a shortcut from Belen straight into that parking lot. He didn't want to be on Socorro Road coming in. So they made him cover it up. He covered it up with his tractor, but he left it a little weak on the banks. So when I irrigated, of course, that water just came out. I tried to do as much as I could, but if he's the one that weakened it, and I had to pay for that because that day I didn't completely finish irrigating, and I had new seeding on my property. So I'm not against them having a business because I have one. My brother has one, and I more power to anybody that wants to make a business, but let's do it the right way. Not just because they come here and they tell you that this is what they plan on doing. I remember 13 years ago, I owned the property on Belen and Buford. When I wanted to put a business there, Marty and Ralph came up and stood up and said, we don't want you to do anything there because we don't know if one of these days you'll turn it into a bar or a strip joint. I said, I'm not that kind of a person to do anything like that. Well, no, but if you sold it to somebody, they would do it. Well, now Karma is coming back. Now they're going to do a wine testing area there. And that's okay. I couldn't do a business. I submitted my blueprints to the city. They looked at it. As a matter of fact, that day that we were here, it was so bad that one of the aldermen sitting in the back of and two of the ones for the Mission Trails, they came up and told me that if I needed any help, because at that time, when you gave your money down, your 600, that was it. You couldn't get it back. They got it back from me because they said it was unfair. So now I'm standing up. It's my turn. I let it go that time. But now, they need to know. Where's Ralph? Ralph and me just can't get along. He's a little hard-headed. I've told them he's a hard-headed person.
I have a couple of questions for you, sir.
Huh?
So I have a couple of questions for you. So when you say about your businesses, is your business a towing company right off of Socorro in the corner of Buford?
Yeah, we're off of Socorro, 10209 Socorro Road. That's where our yard is.
Okay, and your property that you irrigate is the one right across 566, correct?
Well, it runs. Have you all even
Yes,
gone?
I'm very familiar with that area, so I know
Okay.
exactly where Bodega Loya is, and I irrigate myself, so that's why I'm concerned on that. Now, I'm also seeing the site plan, and if we can help out the gentleman, we're all for business and growing, right? On the site plan that was turned into us, we see future walls on the drawing. Is that a condition that has to be met to help out the resident in regards to, of course, nobody wants to see drunk people, right, at night or something like that?
I think commercial properties have to have cement walls, right?
When they're adjacent to residential?
Mm-hmm. So if he's the person, are you the one with the brown fence and you irrigate all that there?
Right.
That's your property there. So you're right in front of where the ponding area is, and I know exactly where the ponding area is, which is right behind the pink or reddish building that's currently vacant there, correct? On that property. So with that rock wall being built there, is that a condition that has to be met before they start using it as a parking area, is my question. Because on the site plan, it's turned in with future wall, only two 30-foot entrances, and then another one over here through Belen Road. Now, I can't do anything about the watering ditches, right? That has to be through Kathy, and of course, that has to get addressed if you
Well,
get to
according to
Belen.
Kathy, it's the city of Socorro that needs to maintain that canal. Kathy only maintains it from Socorro Road where it comes out of their main big canal and feeds onto ours. The one that's ours, that's the city. I need to also know who's gonna take care of that canal, because right now it needs to be taken out. I can't open too much water because the buildup of dirt coming from the main canal, it just builds up and builds up. Somebody's gotta, that
So
has to happen.
I can't answer that. I do know that once they sell the water rights to the city of Socorro, the city of Socorro will pick them up. But I don't know if any of that has been sold to them, so I can't help out with the watering, right? Kathy
Yeah,
would be
no,
able
I
to help with that, and they have exactly who sold the rights
I
to
thought Kathy
the
was
city.
gonna be here
What
today.
I'm trying to help you in is the wall, if he's a resident right in front of it, and definitely it's gonna be used for these businesses, you don't want to be coming out to your property and seeing all these gentlemen, or whatever the gentleman stated here. Now, is that a requirement that has to be met before it's approved?
I'd need to take a look at the code, but I don't know that it would have that specific a requirement for just the parking lot, but it is commercial. If it is a requirement, we can enforce that requirement before allowing them to open the parking lot.
And in regards to the ponding area, to my understanding, it's for safety, it does have to be fenced in before use.
No, if it's not, only if it's a certain depth that it
Okay.
has to be fenced in, but it does need to be maintained by the property owner. So it shouldn't be overgrown with weeds, it shouldn't, it should remain clear of any obstructions. The other thing we should probably elaborate on is that 30-foot entrance from Belen. Are you sure that you want to adhere to that, the way the site plan is laid out? Because if we approve the site plan with the rock walls, then that is what you're agreeing to, and that is what we're approving today.
One of the things that Danny brought up is one of the things that we are considering is being able to exit out of the parking lot using Belen. But again, that little lot belongs to the electric company. I know the city of Socorro is looking into that to see what can be done with that as well too. As far as the entrance, are you talking about the width of what are we referring to?
Just being able to access from there.
Right.
So that was the part that was unclear, since you don't have access right now,
Right,
that we should not include that as part of the site plan,
from Belen Road?
from Belen.
Okay, but you can still get Belen Road to Casa de Piro as well too. Right? We're talking about the little lot
Yes,
next to-
connecting the lot
Yeah,
on the corner to the parking lot.
right.
But
But
sorry
you
to
can, they
interrupt.
can still access their property from Belen Road, the corner property. But
Correct,
we're
which is
referring
Sombra
to
de
the-
Piro on the side where the tree is at per se, they can still access to the back
Right.
lot,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Right, correct. But we're also working with the city about that other adjacent lot, which belongs to the electric company.
Perfect. So,
I have a question. Usually when you have a building, if it's commercial, before it can be opened up to business, the city has to go and give them an occupancy certificate, and that's where they have to take into account the ponding, make sure you're in compliance with the walls, et cetera, right? How does this apply, because it's a vacant lot that's being turned into a parking lot? I would imagine that the partners have created a commercial entity. My question is do they have to come and get, one, a business license, and then two, is there some type of inspection that they have to go through? I imagine so, because it's going from residential to commercial. And if that's the case, I think that's where all what you've mentioned as your apprehensions to the project are gonna be met. With the ones that go to planning and zoning, the ones that can be addressed when it comes to inspections and ordinances, the city of Socorro, it's my understanding, does not have a say as to where we want the ponding, but the city of Socorro demands that you have some sort of self-ponding. So unfortunately, to address that concern, the business owners can decide where they put the ponding. The city of Socorro, the only thing that, it's my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, of how much ponding for the size of the lot is. All the other stuff that you mentioned, unfortunately, I think is outside of the auspices or kind of what we can control as planning and zoning. But does that sound correct, or about the self-ponding, the inspection? If it's going from residential to commercial, there's got to be a business license requested?
Those are all very good points. The ponding areas is a part of the plat, and that's already been identified and approved as part of the overall plat for these two lots. The certificate of occupancy refers to a building, so not really the parking lot, but the city would definitely be a part of any improvements that would require a permit. So the wall and looking into the concern over the canal. So we can look into that issue and whether or not that needs to be included in this.
Well, and I think the most important part is going to be the business license, because every business in the city of Socorro has to have a business license, because this is a commercial entity. This is going from residential to commercial one, or light commercial. I just want to make sure that that we, just make the applicants aware to make sure to request that business license. I know that the other businesses might have it, but this is probably its own EIN, its own business entity. So just make sure you get that to be in compliance, and I'm sure that'll give the city the overview we need to make sure that they address this every year, and it gives everybody else the ability to make sure that the property or the parking lot's in compliance. I think that's kind of where everything is going to get worked out. But thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you. So, do we close? Do you have a question? We close public hearing?
We need to close.
We need to close it up. So we'll close public hearing at 6:10.
So I have a question. Okay, so we're being asked to determine or to vote on rezoning from residential to commercial to allow for a parking lot. And so generally, I think this is a great idea. I think we need the parking in that area, right? Great, it's a good idea. But other things come to mind in the sense of the engineering part of this. Like, for example, the size of the ponding, how deep is it? You talked about location. It says 46 by 21. Who made that determination, right? So I'm thinking the grading. And so I fast forward, it's up and running, fenced in or whatnot, but what crosses my mind is you're going to be servicing your establishment, and you're considering servicing other parking for other businesses. And then I think, okay, what if there's like a huge thunderstorm, right? And there's inadequate flow of water. The other part is, what if there's a fight or a shooting at a bar and inadequate lighting? Is there adequate lighting? Is there adequate service? Like, are the right poles in place? Will there be lighting? I'm thinking, I've been out there late at night, right? And there's bars out there. It's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. Gunfights, fights can happen. Shootings can happen. And so that crosses my mind. Can people go in and out of there safely? Is there adequate draining? Is there adequate lighting? So I'm thinking a site plan showing all this with the proper engineering on it. Parking spaces, grading, and so on. That's what I would like to see, but my question is, do we need that to vote on this? And if not, is someone else going to be looking at that in permitting? And do we have the ordinances in place to take care of that? Because it's a growing area, but, awesome. I think it's a great idea, but I think we need to keep safety at the forefront on this, just in case something ever happens. So that's my question is, do we need to consider all that, like the site plan at this hearing? Or is that going to be determined by permitting and someone else? And I think we need to be clear before, you know, I'm all for voting and passing and having it, but if it's just gonna slip through and there's no checkpoint in place, then I think we need to be cautious. So I don't,
And let me just address that. You know, it's the chicken and the egg, right? Because if we don't have the commercial rezoning, we can't go after grants to allow us to do exactly what you're talking about, the lighting, the wall, the asphalt, the engineering. We already have a budget for that, and we're looking at over close to $100,000 to do that for, to do it right. I mean, we could do it very freely, just put white lines or something like that, but that's not what we want to do. We want to do it right, provide the safety that you're talking about, provide the lighting, having security guards or whatever is needed for that. But in order to do that, we need additional funding, which means we have to have the zoning correct to do that.
okay. So I think the applicant is aware, but, and I'll go, Socorro is growing. I see a lot of new businesses coming in. I get asked that question. Is there, I want to buy this building and I want to turn it into a business, but what about parking? I'm being asked that question. Is there vacant land around it? So the applicant is aware in this case, but maybe we can visit that part of it in the ordinances. If it's not in there, I don't know. Part of the permitting process, part of the certificate of occupancy. Maybe we can add that or look at that beyond this item. I think it'd be worthwhile.
Yes, we can definitely do that. And planning will be working with the applicant, as they stated, for the plans for the parking lot. So if it is for, in the initial, that it is just for the businesses, their businesses, then it can stay that way until it's all resolved. Because I can't tell you whether off the top of my head if a permit is required for it to be, if it's going to be a public, open to other businesses, what kind of arrangements that might involve.
Go ahead, Mr.
Go ahead, Duke.
Can you guide us in any way?
Yeah, so on the parking, there's actually, for the different zoning districts and for different type of businesses, the city ordinances actually has number of spots for what kind of business and how many patrons. For example, I think like on, and I don't know why it's in there, but it says movie theaters, and it says, well, you need to have 3 spaces, I think, or I think it's 1 space for every 3 seats, something like that. So there's actually a calculation on what kind of business. On the lighting issues and safety and security, I think if they're going to be selling wine, then TABC gets involved, and then they have their own, they make you put together a whole plan and what kind of security you have and what kind of light. So that does end up getting covered by different, that's a state agency. They're actually a lot more, stricter on those kind of things. I think somebody asked a question about the fencing requirements or the rock walls. C1 does have, it has it listed, here are the requirements, and actually, it changed last year, May 2022. A lot of these things were updated in the last year, and so it tells you, I think it's either 6-foot wall or 8-foot wall. There was a question on when is it required to be put in. At the beginning, before they started the parking lot, after, the ordinances don't say when it has to, but it needs to be put in place. So once it is operational and it's considered a C1, you need to follow everything to a T in C1, and then that's really on code enforcement. Code enforcement goes out, make sure they're following it. Some of the things, a lot of it, City of Socorro, because it's still a smaller city, there's a lot of leeway usually for the city manager or their designee to waive certain requirements. If it's a smaller business like a mom and pop shop, not a huge commercial thing, they're not necessarily always going to make them do, put all these onerous requirements, like get an engineering plan. If, most of the things that you see come in front of you, if it's a guy that owns a lot, he wants to split it into 2, and he's got his, towing business, and he's got some pondage, it's like, well, they're not going to make him put together a $5,000 engineering plan every time. So a few years ago, actually, that was revamp those ordinances to give some leeway to planning and zoning and the city manager, because of the cost on most people. But, you know, the bigger a business gets and the bigger impact it's gonna have, then it's gonna require those things. So like when you guys see the preliminary plats, final, plats, and they require traffic impact, study, that sort of thing, or it's a huge development with lots of homes or lots of businesses, then it's, you know, it's required and actually expected. And that's why you see then all those engineers coming in usually on behalf of those people. But yeah, on the, kind of the smaller businesses and the smaller properties, it's not always required. You could, you know, you could require it, although the ordinances don't necessarily require it. But you're free to also kind of put certain stipulations if you want, if you're considering approval. Just, you know, you always want to keep in mind something that the city can actually enforce, because it's a, you know, it's still a limited department. So it's like the city of El Paso, that's, I don't know how many inspectors they have, but probably a lot more. It's just a function of what the city can actually do. Usually on the water canals and the ditches and everything, I've dealt with this with the city before, and a lot of times, I mean, the water improvement district controls everything on those. You can't touch those things, you can't, and they get, you know, they take ownership without usually 100%. They're very, very difficult to deal with. So that's just, you know, my general comment on that.
Okay, thank you.
So would it be okay to make a motion to approve contingent on this site plan for the rock walls so that everybody's on the same page or fair share? Resident gets the rock wall so he doesn't have to be seeing these crazy stuff. And then the ladies, of course, we're all for growth with the businesses so that they can continue forward with their.
Yeah, I think that's fine. So you could say that based on the proposed site plan that was provided, you know, and then just you can be specific about, you say, showing the, you know, 30-foot rock wall, whatever it's set on there.
Sir,
I
Sir,
will-
we closed public hearing, sir. We're gonna move on.
Sir,
Sir,
you already had, usually they give 3 minutes for somebody to speak in public forum, and we gave you more than that, and I think, but what I was gonna say is I would prefer to make the recommendation to approve as is, because I think there's already enough tools in the toolbox to keep the property owners to what the city demands. So I'm gonna make a motion to approve it the way that it is.
With the site plan presented?
My recommendation would be to approve as staff recommends approval for the rezoning, and that's it. 'Cause in my opinion, from what I can remember is that any commercial entity does require, and this is just off the top of my head, is we already require 6 feet walls already. So I don't think it's necessary to implement it and distinguish this commercial property from any other. But that's how I'm gonna be voting.
No, as long as those are the guidelines, we should be okay.
I second.
I have a motion made by Enrique Cisneros to approve and second by Andrew Arroyos. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstain? Motion carried. Moving on to item number 7, public hearing request for the proposed amendment to the City of Socorro's master plan and rezoning of track 1-8-8, Lane Clark Survey 293, ABST 6257, located at 1221 Jamie Road, Socorro, Texas, from R1 Single Family Residential to C2 General Commercial with a conditional use permit to allow for commercial truck parking. Mr. Arroyos?
Good afternoon. We open public hearing at 6:22. So there's nobody to speak. We will close public hearing at 6:22 again.
Moving on to item number 8, consider and take action on the proposed amendment to City of Socorro's master plan of Master Plan and rezoning of Track 1-8-8, Lane Clark Survey 293, ABST 6257, located at 1221 Jamie Road, Socorro, Texas, from R1 Single Family Residential to C2 General Commercial with a conditional use permit to allow for commercial truck parking. Mr. Botello?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Jose Botello, planner with the City of Socorro. Item number 8 on the agenda is a rezoning request for 1221 Jaime Road. Some background on this case: it is currently zoned R1, single-family residential. The total lot size is 2.129 acres. It's located on 1221 Jaime Road. The land use is residential. The proposed land use is C2 General Commercial, and the purpose for rezoning is to establish a commercial truck parking area. So the summary of the request is for approval of a rezoning from R1 Single Family Residential to C2 General Commercial with a conditional use permit to allow for a commercial truck parking. And planning and zoning staff recommends approval. So moving forward, the location map. Property is situated within the vicinity of Stockyard Road. And the zoning map showing the current designation as well as the zonings within the immediate vicinity. You can see that there is currently a C2 to the north and to the east of the property, as well as the south. These are pictures of the property from Jaime Road. And an aerial image of the property. You can see Stockyard to the right of the picture. And a public notice was given to the constituents within a 200-foot radius of the property. These are the properties that were notified. And so this is the site plan that was submitted with the rezoning application. And the next slide shows the site plan enlarged, where you could see the ponding area towards the back of the lot, the easements, and you can see the existing building and how the parking is being proposed in the slide. And once again, the summary of the request is for approval of a rezoning from R1 Single Family Residential to C2 General Commercial with a conditional use permit to allow for commercial truck parking. And at this time, staff can answer any questions.
I have some
Mr.
questions.
Cisneros?
Is there anybody living? There's no residential homes, is there? Doesn't look like on the site map that are part of this block?
From my understanding, that is someone's residence.
That's the one resident.
There's 2 residential lots. I don't know if the one to the east or to the west of it is a residential, being used as a residential lot.
Okay.
Yeah, the property to the left of this property is residential, but it's currently vacant.
Because
Yeah,
it looks like,
The mix, it's a very strange mix of industrial, because some of the, if you go back to the zoning map, some of the lots are also M1, and those are no longer allowed
yeah.
zoning. And then there's still agricultural, so it's a very diverse mix of uses. There's Stockyard on the right side of the photograph, and then Horizon to the bottom, on the bottom of the photograph. So if you can kind of visualize, and if you go to the aerial again,
Yeah,
I met,
because it's just south of the petrol station, right? Yeah. I mean, I'll bring this up in Commissioner's report. Maybe we can add this to the future land use to where we can make this all just industrial or commercial trucking, so that, because that's, one is being in El Paso, it's a big trucking region. Two, there's a lot of owner-operators that park in their house, and that's always a big issue. I mean, if we could turn this whole area into future land use so that we make it easier. But the next question I have is this the first application for the new permit?
No, this is not the new permit.
This
This
is not the new
is C2
Okay.
with the condition 4. So they're completely changing their zoning.
And
In
then,
the change that was recently approved by City Council, it was to allow in R1 for a single commercial vehicle.
thank you. And then
Park.
the last question is there's enough room on Jaime Road to turn, and that's what the illustration is showing, right?
Yes, sir, correct.
No further questions from me.
How wide is Jaime Road?
I believe about 30 feet.
I think it's, according to this, I mean, I might be reading it incorrectly, but is it 27 feet? Oh, no.
I think that's a radius.
The what?
I think you're looking at the
Turning
radius.
radius?
Thank you,
It's a
sir.
radius.
Thank you.
I'm good.
You're good? One last question. Did anybody call in favor or against? the change?
No
Opposition?
correspondence was received by the planning and zoning staff in opposition or in favor.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion made by Andrew Arroyos to approve, second by Enrique Cisneros. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstain? Motion carried. Moving on to item number 9, public hearing request for the proposed amendment to the City of Socorro's master plan and rezoning of Block E, Lot 4, Vinedo Acres subdivision located at 345 Tokay Avenue, Socorro, Texas, from R1 Single Family Residential to RM1 Mobile Home Subdivision District to allow for the placement of mobile homes and to subdivide property. Mr. Arroyos?
Good afternoon, we open public hearing at 6:30. Anybody? So we close public hearing at 6:30.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 10, consider and take action to the proposed amendment to the City of Socorro's master plan and rezoning of Block E, Lot 4, Vinedo Acres subdivision located at 345 Tokay Avenue, Socorro, Texas, from R1 Single Family Residential to RM1 Mobile Home Subdivision District to allow for the placement of mobile homes and to subdivide property. Mr. Botello?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Jose Botello, planner with the City of Socorro. Item number 10 on the agenda is a rezoning request of 345 Tokay Avenue. So the lot is currently zoned R1, which is single family residential. The total lot size is a little over 1 acre. The address is 345 Tokay Avenue. It is, the land use is currently residential. The proposed land use would remain as residential, and the purpose for the rezoning is to allow the placement of a mobile home or mobile homes and to subdivide the property. And so the summary of the request is for approval of a rezoning from R1 Single Family Residential to RM1 Mobile Home Subdivision District to allow for the placement of mobile home or homes. And Planning and Zoning staff recommends approval. And so this is the location map showing the property, which is between Tokay Avenue and F.E. Jackson Road. The zoning map of the property showing the mainly R1 residential zoning. You see a few C2s within the vicinity. pictures of the property from Tokay Avenue. Then this is the aerial image showing the location of the property. This is within the Vinedo Acres subdivision. Also, a public notice was given to the constituents within a 200-foot radius of the property, and the properties in blue were notified of the rezoning. We received a letter of support from the applicant showing support from the surrounding neighbors for the rezoning. And as well as the site plan showing what the intent is to be able to place, to be able to subdivide the lot and place additional mobile homes within the property. And so a summary of the requests for approval of a rezoning from R1 Single Family Residential to RM1 Mobile Home Subdivision District to allow for the placement of mobile home or mobile homes. And at this time, staff can answer any questions.
Question on the mobile homes, I don't remember correctly or whatnot, is there an ordinance where it can only be a double wide, or they still allow single wides?
Yes, so to be specific,
It has to be a double wide and no older than 8 years.
What's the current ordinance on the number of mobile homes per lot?
it is one mobile home per lot.
But if it's rezoned to RM,
It remains one mobile home per lot.
if it's RM?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is the applicant here today?
Yes.
And they do plan on coming back to the commission with a replat. But in order to be able to replat, they would need the zoning change. So they are missing an additional step. They will need to come back to replat to allow for the 3 lots as they've laid them out in their site plan.
So before we hear from the applicant, I do have some questions. So the goal is to split the lot up into 3?
Yes.
Okay. My next question is, if we're going from R1 to RM, does that count as spot zoning?
No, it's still a residential use. They're mobile homes, and that's the only clarification in the distinction between the two, but they're still for residents. A spot zoning would be if you had one commercial inside a residential, or if you had one residential inside an area that was predominantly commercial.
Which that example makes sense, but what I'm thinking is, and I'm just, this is just a question, is if we're going from R1 with 1 residence to an RM with 3 residents, that would stop being an R1 and be an R2.
Okay, but it's still residential in nature?
And I'm just thinking of, like, we've had these conversations about splitting lots in an R1 into an R2, and then we get into this confusion, and it hasn't been all that well designed.
There are some R2s if we go back to the zoning map, we can see some R2s that went through the process of getting the rezoning. And Jose can remind me when those were done. So there's already some R2s. And then the other thing that would be of note is that they're not all the traditional or the original larger lots. They've already been kind of subdivided. One of the ones towards the bottom, that kind of like in the middle of this photograph, you can see that lot was divided into 3. So there's already been replats in this, so the lots are large enough. Or even within R1 to accommodate 3 lots where originally 1 lot was platted. Now the one to the right of our actual property, that one was not something that was done after the city's requirements. So that one was actually just done by Meets and Bounds. So I was curious as to why that one was for. A little farther down on Tokai, you can see another one that was three, subdivided into three. That one was a replat. So there are already replats where kind of, it's still residential, but it's not just the one larger lot.
Well, and according to the site plan, all three lots are gonna be over 10,000, so they continue to meet the R1. If they wanted to turn the big lot into, because the big lot would be 2,500 square feet, or 25,000, they'd be able to still split that one in half. Is that the case? I mean, I know.
No, they don't want to. They just
I know that's
want
not what
the-
they're requesting, but
Yeah.
instead of 3 lots,
the
you could have
future.
4. But those were my questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Isaac Rodriguez. I'm here representing the owner. My capacity is the engineer of record. So to provide you some history on this, originally the intent was to split it up into 3 lots and still meet the R1 requirement. Now, there is very specific verbiage on your ordinance that states that the placement of a mobile home cannot be placed on a subdivision that is approved after, I'm going to say 2002. I don't know the exact date, but it's early 2000s. Because we're doing a replat, we don't meet that requirement anymore, right? So now we have to rezone it in order for us to place a mobile home. Now, the surrounding area around there, the majority of them are mobile homes. So what triggered the rezoning is not necessarily the intent to try and change it from R1 to RM1, it's to make it legal and conforming. So the intent was always to split it into 3 lots, the way it's proposed on the site plan, and maintain the minimum 10,000 square foot lot with on-site ponding. That was always the intent. However, in order to place a mobile home, because of that very specific verbiage, we needed to put it in a zoning where it would be allowed. So even though the majority of the neighbors are already doing that, and they're under R1, because it was done before, and I'm assuming it was done before 2002, I'm not sure. I think that's why she asked, how come these were split with meets and bounds, and they're pretty much allowed to do it. We're trying to make it legal and conforming, so that's why we're requesting the rezoning. It's not necessarily to, change the use or anything like that, it's just to make it legal. Questions, comments, concerns?
No?
I can't read the letter of support.
We brought it in.
We have copies as well. Were those handed out, Jose?
I think the owner's here. I don't know if you want to go to him. And I apologize, I couldn't come dressed professionally. I'm recovering from a surgery and working from home right now, so.
I could read it. No, yeah. No questions, that one.
Okay, so the intent is to be family owned.
Yes, sir.
Right, family owned. Okay. I'm 50-50 on these, I really am. So I'll point out the city of San Elizario, I believe, doesn't allow mobile homes at all whatsoever. Am I correct? You guys heard that? Is that correct or no?
I'm not familiar with that,
Yeah,
or
what-
being true for San Elizario or not.
Whatever's been grandfathered in is grandfathered in, but I don't think they allow any, it doesn't matter the year, it doesn't matter the size, double wide. Okay, so long-term resident of Socorro, right? I'll give you another example, and maybe this is why it's on my head, but, okay, and you're familiar with 628 Milo, the duplex. There's a duplex on 628 Milo that's available for sale. I got a call from an agent, has a willing and able buyer, and the first question, in fact, the only question was, are there other mobile homes in the area? And I said, yes. And so a few days pass and the deal goes dead, that's the deal breaker. It's other mobile homes in the area. So that's why I question the idea of the mobile home. When I look at it as far as it's a place to live and the whole thing, it's a choice. But allowing more of them is something that I'm struggling with going, I'm 50-50 on it. So I know there's ordinances, 1 per lot, we're splitting up the lot, 3 more. I'm just thinking out loud. I'm not, I'm neither here nor there on this one.
If it makes you feel any better, it will be aesthetically pleasing, and it's a very nice mobile home.
I'm sure. I have there are really nice, and like I said, it's a matter of choice, right? Family members that I have, it's really, really nice. I just, I'm 50-50 on it. I think it's a great idea if, for family and so on, but it certainly sets precedent. That's what I'm looking at. In this particular case, well, that's why I was interested in the letter of support. When I first saw this, I thought it was going to be like a mobile home park. But, okay. So I'm good.
Any questions?
Yeah. No, I agree where you're coming, I mean, I know where you're coming from. I think that's kind of a bigger issue that city council has to be, because there, at one point, single, what do you call it? Single wide was no longer accepted in the city, so in order for that to happen, I think, city council has to make that adjustment. And that does have to do with the development and kind of what you want to see incorporated in the city, what you want. My thinking is, unfortunately, home ownership has gotten so expensive that there's got to be, in my opinion, looking at the bigger picture, there's got to be these stepping stones to get to single-family residentials. And the unfortunate part is manufactured homes have gotten very expensive as well. But I understand where you're coming from, but I think there are those other things to consider.
Well, yes, I agree, and I understand completely as far as the purchasing and so on. But when we allow, so you mentioned the majority of homes in this area are mobile homes.
That's correct.
So then my next question is how many? What's the ratio, right? What's next to this particular one and so on. But more than that is if when we allow that, if you allow a depreciating asset, if it's an asset, and we allow it in the same neighborhood where there are appreciating assets, where's the fairness there and to what party? If you have an established neighborhood with fixed homes that have been maintained and are appreciating, and you allow a mobile home that's been maintained and depreciating, then now you start comparing, okay, like the phone call that I got, it was a deal breaker. An investor did not want to buy a duplex because in that neighborhood there were mobile homes. And so that's the part that I'm questioning. Where people want to live, it doesn't matter to me. But the fairness of it. And so let's assume that we had, 90% of this were fixed homes. Well, what would the decision be? Would we allow splitting that lot into 3 to put in a depreciating asset that may or may not affect the value of the other homes? This is I'm assuming it's an older established neighborhood. They've been there a long time. I'm not familiar with the neighborhood. Are you guys familiar with the neighborhood? Yeah. Is it the majority?
The Veneta, what did we find that it was platted in 73? Filed in 73.
Filed in 73.
So I think that now's the perfect time to take that subject, what you're talking about. The good thing is, and it all has to do with the future economic development of where the city is headed towards. And city council has just approved a vendor that's going to draw up the plans for the economic development for the city of Socorro going into the future. So I think it's something that we can address in Commissioner's report and ask planning and zoning if there are certain zones where we can, so for example, the one we just addressed a little bit ago, where, okay, it's just south of Petro, why don't we just make it part of the future land develop, or future plan use to make it all commercial, that way they don't, to make it easier for them to go make it commercial instead of having to come to us. I think it's a perfect time to address that in Commissioner's report, because there is that future economic development that they're starting planning that going into the future. I think in this case, this is the first time I've ever seen a letter in support, and by the addresses, they're all abutting or very close addresses. So I think your thoughts are absolutely head on, but in this case, they're on it. But I do definitely see where your concerns are, and I would ask you to bring that up in the commissioner's report so that we can start planning those things. Where's the commercial development going to be? Where is the future land use for North Loop? What's going to be? Where can we allow high density mobile home, whatever the definition is? But I think in this case, it's on it.
Is the current existing building a mobile home?
Yes, that's correct. So there'd only be 2 additional mobile homes, and they would be newer models that we want.
And an RV parking, right?
I'm sorry about that?
And an RV parking is what you guys have on the site?
Possibly, that was put there in the event they do want to place it. That'll be finalized when we submit for permit, because we still got to go before you guys for permit, or before the Planning and Zoning Commission to pull the permit. This was just the conceptual model plan.
So, okay, so we're looking at a rezone and an eventual request for a lot split.
Yes.
It'll come back.
More questions?
Okay, no, I'm good.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I second.
I have a motion made by Enrique Cisneros to approve, seconded by Andrew Arroyos. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstain? Motion carried. Moving on
Thank you,
to,
gentlemen. Appreciate you got up to 51%.
thank you. Moving on to item number 11, consider and take action on the proposed approval of a preliminary plat for Horizon Park Unit 1 being all of Track 2A, 3B1, 4C1L, and 9A2, Block 3, Socorro Grande, El Paso County, Texas. Mr. Botella?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Jose Botello, planner with the City of Socorro. Item number 11 is the Horizon Park Unit 1 preliminary plat.
I'm so sorry. I should have interrupted you before. I'm sorry, but I would like to abstain from this item, just because of the relationship of, with the owners or whatnot. So I just want to put that on record.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Sorry.
Some background on this case, it is currently zoned C2 general commercial and R2 medium density residential. The lot size is 31.7 acres. It's located on Horizon Boulevard. It is currently vacant, and the proposed land use would remain as commercial and residential. The summary of the request is for approval of the Horizon Park Unit 1 preliminary plat. And staff is recommending approval with the condition that an updated traffic impact analysis and a master plan be approved prior to submitting the final plat. So this is the location map showing the property, which is right off of Horizon Boulevard. And in blue, you see outlined the property being platted. The majority is zoned R2. The portion abutting Horizon Boulevard, the small red rectangle, is C2. These are pictures of the property. The one above was taken from Horizon Boulevard. The one below was taken from Range War Court. And an aerial image showing the property in its entirety. And the preliminary plat. So the summary of the request is for approval of the Horizon Park Unit 1 preliminary plat. And at this time, staff can answer any questions. We also have the applicant's representative, Mr. Jorge Azcárate, on the line to answer any questions.
So, first question is did anybody contact Planning and Zoning Department in favor or against the preliminary plat?
We do not notify the public of preliminary final plats.
Okay, just when it's rezoned?
It's public hearings, rezoning, conditional use permits.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
So, it's a preliminary plat, and I believe it shows, I'm assuming it's a plat of one large parcel, or are they, I'm
Do you want to pull up the preliminary plat?
So I guess what I'm getting at is what's going to be built out there? Is it, the Bollings typically build either homes, they subdivide lots, or is this going to be like an apartment complex?
There is a lot that's identified for apartments, and then residential is proposed for the larger lot toward the bottom of the preliminary plat, as you can see, as it's being depicted on the screen. And then there's commercial on Horizon. If you want to look at the zoning map, you can see what's proposed via the zoning. And that zoning change was approved back in, was the zoning approved in 2000?
The rezoning was approved January 20 of 2022.
And so it was rezoned from agricultural to residential / commercial?
There
or-
was, I believe it was some commercial as well that was rezoned to R2.
Okay. So it's going to be a
But
common,
the applicant might have more.
Good. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, may you state your name, please?
Yes, Jorge Azcárate with CA Group for the record. And Commissioners, just to answer your question, it was actually downzoned. It was actually zoned, previously the entire parcel was zoned C2. And in 2002, like time staff stated, it was downzoned from C2 to R2. The intent is to build, we reserved a commercial property in the front along Horizon Boulevard. And then the rest is going to be an apartment complex. And then the large lot that you see, which is Block 1, Lot 3, the large is, we're working on a residential subdivision plat that will probably be submitted before you sometime in late July, early August. Probably hit your agenda probably the 3rd or 4th week of August, where we would demonstrate to you the single-family residential development.
okay.
I'm not sure if that answered your questions.
How many, just a rough estimate, how many single lots do you see coming into the residential area?
If my memory serves me correct, sir, I believe it's about 128 on the large lot that you see there.
I didn't catch it. How many?
Oh, 128, sir.
120.
Residential lot.
128?
Right, and then the apartment, I want to say it's, I think it's 80, either 54 or 80 units. I think it's 80 units, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. And so, just for, I guess, reference, across the street, right across the street, we had one come in recently with a full-blown apartment complex. The gated. I don't remember how many units were coming in there. So, I think, in general, I think it's a good idea. It's right off of Horizon Boulevard. Will you be having access from any of the adjacent parcels?
Yes, sir. We're going to be having access as we come in for the full development on when the residential development. We're going to also have access crossing the Mesa Spur Drain to access another property that they own as well, and then also through Range Ward Court that goes to Birch Street. We're going to improve. Right now, it's an unimproved roadway easement that runs through this subject property, and we're going to be improving our portion with curb and gutter, asphalt. We're going to put an inlet because there's a low spot there so that it doesn't flood, and put it into a ponding area. And that way now the abutting property owner, which I want to say is Cesar Serna, will now have paved access actually to his property.
Now, I have a question. All those are currently dirt roads, right? Like per se, Range War, that's currently a dirt road, isn't it? Are they planning on paving those, or that's gonna be like the main access there? If they go to.
You sounded a little bit far, but if I can hear you properly, I think you're saying if the main access is going to be through Range War. No, sir, the main access is going to be through Horizon Boulevard. Range War is actually partially paved, and then as it enters through our subdivision or through our property, it's an unpaved, unimproved road easement that provides access to the abutting tracks. We're going to come in and actually improve it, where now it's paved, going through this subject property.
Does Range War connect all the way to Horizon?
Connects to Burt, and then Burt connects to Horizon.
Correct.
So that'll be the second entrance exit?
Yes.
That's what's gonna count? Okay.
Correct.
So there'll be access, I guess, through existing communities like Burt Road. I'm somewhat familiar with the area. So there will be access through existing communities. At what point, and I guess my question is, do they get notified at any point in the process or not in this case? Like,
Not in this case.
Not in this
Again, it would be, we don't send out notification for preliminary plats.
or
Final
final
plats.
plats? Okay, and then, you mentioned, you're basing recommendation of approval based on?
With the condition?
The TIA and the condition of submitting a master plan?
The master plan approval.
Showing all the streets, the apartment complex, all the egress streets?
Yes.
Okay.
And we concur with staff's recommendations as well. This is what I've got at the CA. We concur with their recommendations.
They concur. Okay.
What did he say?
That he concurs, that
Oh.
they'll turn in the TIA and the...
Okay. I couldn't hear what he said.
That is correct.
Questions? Okay, I'm good.
No questions?
No, I'm good.
I'll make a motion to approve with staff recommendations and requesting the
Updated
Approval of the master
traffic
plan.
impact analysis and the approval of the master plan.
Like he said.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Quick,
I have a motion made by Enrique Cisneros to approve with staff recommendation, second by Osvaldo Reza. All those in favor of the motion?
Just a minute, Mr. Estrada, did you have a question?
I know they're moving ground over there already, right? So
I think they've already started.
they already started, which, I mean, it's either here nor there, but I'm assuming it's just basic infrastructure road or,
Yes, they requested I'm drawing a blank on the official term, excavation, temporary excavation, to get started on work on the project.
just curious.
So just clearing
Uh,
before.
I was wondering what was happening over there, but I do remember seeing this one some years or some time ago. I couldn't tell you when.
Yeah,
Probably the zoning change?
Yeah.
like a year, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, something like that.
Okay, I'm good. Sorry.
Okay, one more time, I have a motion made by Enrique Cisneros to approve with staff recommendation, seconded by Osvaldo Reza. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstain?
Aye.
Motion carried. Moving on to item
Thank you,
number.
Commissioners.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 12, Planning and Zoning Commissioner Report.
So I'd like to request staff, that parcel that we were looking at just south of the Petro off of Horizon, let me see. It looks like it was item 5 and 6. No, no,
Yes, the
sorry.
one on Jaime?
Sorry.
I think it was 7 and 8, no?
7 and 8. Yeah, 7 and 8. So I know that the city of Socorro has recently decided or chosen a third-party entity that's going to start developing the economic development plan for, I guess, the next 25 years. I don't know how many years. Right? I mean, they probably do a 10-year plan, 25-year plan, something like that. Anyways, my question is if we can identify these properties that are closest to I-10, see if we can identify some parcels where we can include them in the future land use to to give people, those property owners, an easy way to turn them into commercial entities for trucking companies, being that, one, we're in the region it's one of our biggest economic draws. Two, we have a number of small business owners that's what they do. And then three, that the city of Socorro has that issue where we do have a lot of owner-operators that park in residential areas and in their homes. And I think it's one way that we can try to alleviate that. I don't know if there's some areas that we can identify that.
And then the other opportunity will be with our comprehensive plan and the rewrite. So one, with the comprehensive overall, we can look at, one, the land use network, the future development of the plan that we currently have from 2014. We're going to all be a part of updating that plan, and that will definitely be a big part of that conversation. The land use, economic development, housing, the type of mix of housing. So all of these will come up here. I have the kickoff internally for the start to be June 22nd, and then with you all, your second meeting in July. An introduction to the process, how we're going to move forward with the comprehensive plan update, and that's going to be ideally the place where we want to capture that, as well as the economic development project plan that's also being developed by the city. So all of these things, it's really important that we coordinate, they're all on the same page. So yes.
Good. And a follow-up question would be, so I understand that the city's going to start running with that ball very soon, right? But we won't see it till the middle of July. Is there an opportunity for stakeholders, and I'll ask me specifically, as a business owner, volunteer, because I'd really like to see from, you know, be a fly on the wall from the very beginning, if possible.
No, yes, definitely. This kickoff in July is the very beginning. There will be tons of opportunities for workshops, for people to come in person. We'll try to work with the consultant to also have, you know, virtual opportunities for people who maybe don't want to come in person, but also want to give input to be able to do that via, you know, maybe like a interactive map where they can, you know, make their comments, put like virtual sticky notes on maps and say what they want to see more of or see less of, but also understanding that we have to kind of give opportunities and not, so give opportunities for everyone to participate.
Thank you.
I think that's a great idea.
Did you want to add No, I'm good. Like we talked about earlier, like, I mean, you're right on. But I think I see it coming, which I think is great. So we'll discuss it more, but
As it comes
that's
on.
what you're saying. I do want to bring up another, I guess, point. So out of the 4 items that we had today, 3 of them brought engineered site plans. I mean, one of them was 30 acres, I think, the last one. You know, but the first one was, I get it, small business, it takes, you mentioned it, it takes money to get to that point. But it's my opinion, it frustrates me a lot to see that because it's just no, when you're forced to pay for something, I guess, there's a lot more thought process put into it, right? And on the applicant's end, on our end, we have a better understanding of what we're looking at. Is there anything in the ordinance, is there anything on the front end that says that they have to submit something that's drawn to some scale, even to scale? I'll tell you, because I'm inclined to make a motion to table until that's done, but I understand where applicants are coming from. You know, it's a lot easier and less expensive to draw it by hand, but I don't know.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? It's just, it's
One of those items at like the discretion of staff that may be wanting to be encouraging and helpful, and maybe that's not the direction we need to go. We need to kind of be very forceful on those things, to be professional, to provide all of the information that's needed. So I can understand your point of view on that, and we can definitely consider be more prudent on that end in moving forward.
so like on the first applicant, when for the record, I voted yes. Okay, I'm for it, all right? But when they go, I'm still not completely clear on the process. Are they going to submit something for permitting? Do they go, you know, to the permitting department, and what do they turn in? And then, because I don't see them turning in what they turned in here, because the permitting department would say, okay, I need this to scale. Who determined
Yeah.
the size of the pond? You know, where's the
So
engineering?
that will be under our purview, and we'll make sure to, if we would like to bring that back so that everyone is aware of what the process is. But the permitting would be through our office. So you need to, I'm not sure if there are examples of other parts of the areas of the city where that's already been done, or what we might need to do to just make sure that we're following any ordinance and catching everything, because you also brought up some good points about things to be careful for and be aware of, knowing that in the future, the larger goal is to have this be a public parking for folks who visit all of the Mission Trail, or however far along down the Mission Trail they care to walk.
So once they come, I'm sorry.
Well, yes, and so with that particular applicant, I'd like to see their project go through when they open for business and so on, but I wanted to ask, but, I mean, something like that is, even that's half an acre, what's the dollar amount on that? I'm guessing $5,000. you know, $3,000. But, I mean, so, like, these in here are just easily that much. Like the trucking parking, that was an acre. That costs a lot of money to get to that point. And so I'd hate to see their project get stalled based on, oh crap, now we gotta come up with $3,000 to submit something, or, you know, I don't know, that's just my thought. So at this point, you know, at this so early in the process, that's why I'm bringing it up. Is it worth you know, forcing them to submit an engineered site plan? That's all I'm saying. That's just it.
Well, and I guess I have a question about that. I definitely see that concern. What my concern is, once it's a C2, it can be a C2
Correct.
under whatever, there's a long list of definitions where it can be. Is there ever a situation where the city can hold them to what the original thought was, or because they're the business owners? I mean, they can change their mind at any point, right? Is there any teeth to the city being able to say, oh, okay, you went from you're a C2 now, so in the example was, okay, if you, let's say it's C2, you can open up a bar or whatever, something that was undesired, right? That didn't require a special permit. That's it, that's the end of it, right? Just to be clear on that, right? There's nothing that the city can do afterwards.
In other communities, I've seen where the Planning and Zoning Commission may have stricken certain uses that the neighbors found questionable, and those were stricken from the available uses for that property.
For that specific property, oh, okay. Oh, can we do that?
Could we?
Are we allowed to make like a conditional request, right? Give them a certain amount of time to use it as like as a temporary parking space with a timeline for them to make improvements on that lot, or is that like out of the question?
So if I can jump in here on that one, so it makes it very hard to kind of police if it's like a temporary thing, because then the city needs to keep going back and checking. And so then if we did that on a lot of different things, then it constantly have to go back and check. And then you might put different time periods. So you might say, well, we'll allow for 6 months or 9 months, which is why then if they go through the construction permitting process, usually there's a certain time period. But to kind of answer the question too on restricting the use, it gets into an area where you start restricting people on certain businesses.
On their property.
Of their property, so then it's like, well, people own their property, so you can't, you know, once they're in a C2, you're right, it's a C2. But there's still other restrictions, so even if you don't put it in place, let's say you allow something, like I was referring when they were here on the TABC.
Yeah.
If there's a school down the street with a certain amount of feet, church, they can open up a pornography store, a bar, those kind of things. So even though City of Socorro may allow C2, they still are restricted by certain things, and they can never put them in place. And things can change too. I mean, I think, I don't know about this if it's grandfathered in, but if the school is then built later on, if they can still operate, I think they're probably grandfathered, but no, there's still restrictions. But yeah, it starts to get in that territory of you're telling them people what to do with their property.
And what if they
There's
sell?
a limit.
But so I know it's all theoretical at this point, but that's kind of the point, right? To kind of know where we can and cannot step over. But then when you're talking about like, hey, certain timelines to get certain things done, and to put restrictions on what they can or cannot do, you're giving neighbors and the general public kind of something. If that's the case, and if we're allowed to do that within the auspices of the law, it gives the public and the city kind of the tools needed to make sure that it's done.
Yes, and you also kind of have that, and in an example of that with the ICMUD, it's a requirement of the ICMUD to have a development plan. So you are very comfortable knowing what is in place. And it's very, there's some areas, there is some ability for the applicant to make minor adjustments to the master plan. without having to come back and get that master plan approved. But they're committing to this idea of what they want for this, zoning change to ICMUD. So that's an example of where we have some control.
So I guess, would it be, I don't know if anybody else, there's a saying, it's always good to start looking into problems before they come to your doorstep. My question would be and it doesn't have to be this next meeting or the one after that, but I don't know if we can get some clarification on that, and we might not be able to, because then that kind of defines of what we can and cannot do, and then somebody can use it against us. But, so I guess my question is, would it be smart to ask for, some legal basis or what we can and cannot do? And it might not be good to do that either, because then, I guess you understand what I'm trying to say.
That's a good question. It's, I don't know, did you guys attend a workshop earlier this year?
Yes, last year.
Last year, maybe?
Last year, late last year.
Last year, yes.
Late last year.
So that's one of the things that should be kind of covered, but, and to answer your question about, looking ahead. So really the best way to do it is like, if you see these problems, is then to put it in an ordinance and redo the ordinances. So if you say, okay, if you ever come in for a C2 and you're asking for a parking lot, it's gonna be done within 6 months and walls must be erected before the parking lot is finished. I mean, now it's really hard to contemplate a very exact thing, but in general, we want to put enough rules in place that it should apply in a lot of different situations. So, and a lot of times, that's why I mentioned to you guys, if you ask me a question about, well, what about the walls or something, so I'm usually looking it up, and because every year we're going through and revising them. I mean, the last biggest update was about, I think last year, Mr. Galina went through, and so 2022 was the walls. And there's a bunch, so, we could look through it sometime, but there's supplemental district rules that apply to all the districts. So the walls were just updated for everybody, residential and commercial. And, even as the attorney dealing with sometimes is, they're constantly changing on it. Every time city council meets, they're enacting another ordinance. And so we're trying to stay on top of, okay, what changed from 2 years ago? Or there's slight changing on words. I mean, I can tell, because I usually help the city with the ordinances as well, so we're going through and revising them. And it'll be very slight things that change, like something changed on swimming pools. And then we change it a second time. And I think it was how far it needs to be back from the wall or from a fence. And we change the number of feet. So they're constantly changing. I mean, so, that's why I'll kind of mention these something. I always have to double check because it may have changed last week. And we don't know. But yeah, we'll want to come up with those rules. And, the biggest thing is that the city's growing. You guys can see that you're part of it, and so a lot of these things are now realizing, okay, we need to go and put in some, a better set of ordinances, which is why I think Loren last time she had brought up doing the uniform changes. So because there was a lot of holes still, and we only find that as we're going through, I'm like, oh no, there's something missing. We didn't contemplate it, especially you guys can see with all the commercial development and all these the requests that have come in Nueva Tanks Road and all around that area, the warehouses. A lot of the rules, the city didn't have these, and we had to enact them kind of on the fly. And so, a lot of that you can have input on it. Of course, city council's always taking those items up, and your city district, your district members. There's multiple ways to get out there, but yeah, it's not a perfect process, and then you can see that unfortunately sometimes changes happen within the city, and then you're starting over again each time, so it's tough. But yeah, there's ways to address it. So
Thank you.
and I should have said, feel free to cut me off anytime. So all lawyers talking, we'll talk. I have usually a hard time keeping my mouth shut over here.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Great info.
I'm curious on the mobile homes in San Elizario. Can you guys, I don't know. I keep asking them, they're saying they're not allowed, but can you guys look into it? I'm being told that they're not allowed whatsoever. New
In San Eli?
in San Elizario City, yeah, the city of San Elizario.
Yeah, I kind of was briefly discussing with Lorenzo, we can kind of compare and contrast them. I'll tell you that in the past, because I've looked at other cities, we looked at other ordinances, and with, I'm trying to think of the other ones, like Benton, and then Horizon. I mean, they don't always necessarily, I'm not speaking ill of other municipalities, but they don't necessarily do it the right way sometimes. So they'll put in some ordinances, and then we found, because it comes to City of Socorro and they say, hey, we want to do the same exact thing they did. Just copy and paste the ordinance, and we go look at it, and it's actually not right, or it's illegal. And then we have to explain to the City of Socorro why it can't be done here. So on that one, I'm not sure, but I will tell you that generally on housing, because there's a lot of things that violate the, things like the Fair Housing Act. And I know people have different preferences on whether or not they want mobile homes near their properties and their areas, but it's a tough thing because you have to look at the demographics of people and the income, and there needs to be housing available in different shapes and sizes to different people. Now, the city can choose where to put the districts, which is what it has done. But it's a tough thing because, you know, and outside groups a lot of times come and litigate those things and say, hey, you denied those people because they're poor people and they can't afford anything, and now you're not giving them any options. And so, because I know a lot of people, I think we've seen applications here on, like the apartments, like subsidized housing and everything. And a lot of times I hear the residents say that oppose it, and they can, but whether the city can take that into account, because then it says, well, you're discriminating against people that have less money, and you're favoring rich people or people that have money. And so then you're enacting laws only to benefit the rich people, which is then it creates a problem for the city because it's like, okay, we're being inequitable. So it's kind of a balance of things. I usually won't, again, shut down people when I hear it being said, but, you know, we can't, you know, as the city, kind of pick and choose. But yes, on districts, so there's a way for planning to put things kind of in a place that, you know, that the city has as part of its comprehensive master plan, so.
So, yeah, so, okay, I want to stress that I'm not anti-mobile, I'm not. You have the freedom to choose, everybody does, but I'm more on the pro homeowner, like I'm keenly aware of values, property values, and how they get affected on the negative side and on the positive side. And unfortunately, a mobile home typically will tend to depreciate and not help the value of adjacent properties for the most part. I think there are exceptions, but that's the point where I'm coming from. So, for example, if there's one that comes in and there's an acre, and that's what I thought was going to happen today. I thought that homeowner wanted to come in and say, okay, I have a half an acre and I want to split this up inside with a community and put 10 mobile homes inside this acre. Well, you have a bunch of single-family homes, and that, you know, that's where I'm kind of like, okay, well, do we really want to do this? I think that's up for discussion. You know, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and on those things, I mean, those are kind of judgment calls on your guys' part. That's why you're on here as the commissioners. There's no right or wrong answer necessarily. I mean, the ordinances, they kind of give just kind of like a guide that say, well, if it violates, you know, or if it doesn't, if the character of the area has changed and they're asking for something that goes with now the current character, you could allow. But, you know, they're all judgment calls, so there's no right or wrong answer.
And that goes along with the covenants of the development? Would that be part of the covenants? No?
It could be.
Like let's say in that area where these lots were split up, I don't know how many years ago, it was developed in 71 or somebody said 70?
73 is when the plat was filed.
With 73. So if there, I guess the only time when, if it can only be in those older developments where there wasn't probably any covenants, anything new. But that's where we're in a really great time to take a look at those things because of the future land use is gonna change, or they're looking at it, the future economic development plan is all changing right now. So I think it's perfect time to take a look at all those things.
Yeah, you brought up a question on restrictive covenants, and really, that's the strongest way for a neighborhood, if you want to keep it a certain way. Because even if the city decides to change things and allow certain things, you can't do it in violation of the covenants, because they were there, they were recorded with the county first. So you build a division with, 200 homes back in the 70s, and they say, you will not put any mobile home lots in here. You will not, build a 2-story home. You won't do X, Y, or Z. Those are in, and even if the city subsequently changes it, it actually gives you a right also to sue each other. So the neighborhood association can sue one person if they're violating it. Each owner can police it and sue the other person if they're violating it. So if that's really the strongest thing, and Texas is actually they've become very powerful, the neighborhood associations. Not so much in El Paso area, but Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Austin, they have huge neighborhood associations, and they've given them a lot of control, and the law actually does allow them to enforce it all the way, so.
I'm good.
Any further comments? Thank you. Thank you all. We're moving on to item number 13, Planning and Zoning Department Report. Mr. Botello or Ms.
Thank
Camila?
you. Today, I attended a pre-construction meeting with TxDOT and was informed of the upgrade of Horizon from North Loop to Ascension. So there's going to be a little bit of disruption on Horizon. It's going to begin at the interstate to Darrington, will be like that first phase, and move toward the latter part of that project. It'll be a repaving, restriping, and upgrade of Horizon. We've also have picked up the ongoing meetings for the Nuevo Hueco Tanks extension. I know that there had been a pause prior to my arriving, and that has since been picked up again. We're meeting regularly with the consultant, the engineering firm, TxDOT, and coordinating different items as necessary with the MPO. So that project is moving forward. We were recently invited to attend a TxDOT workshop that's coming up on July 19th. If anyone is interested, I can definitely find out if that's open to the larger public on freight parking. So recently, the state enacted some requirements of trucking and trucking logging hours, but that raised a larger issue for what about when they have met the requirement for their travel time work and they're not in a place where they can park. What do they do then? So I think the state has taken on a larger role to look at what can be done to assist with that item. And then I already mentioned our upcoming meetings with the Matrix Consulting Company, and looking forward to kicking off that comprehensive plan update. That, I think that's everything for planning.
Thank you, Ms. Camilo. Moving on to item number 14, consider and take action on the adjournment of this meeting. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Want to include you?
Okay, I have a motion made by Andrew Arroyo to adjourn, second by Osvaldo Reza. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstain? Motion carried. Meeting adjourned at 7:31. Thank you all for coming.